Our planet is a living tapestry, woven with countless threads of life. But what of the threads that have been lost? The creatures that once walked this earth, whose whispers we can only hear in the fossil record and the echoes of history. Imagine, if you will, a world where giants with shaggy coats roamed frozen plains and birds with no fear of man walked island shores. These are not creatures of myth, but real animals, whose stories are as fascinating as they are tragic. Today, we embark on a journey back in time to witness these lost wonders as they were. What you are about to see is a careful reconstruction, a visual journey where every animal brought to life on your screen will faithfully represent the magnificent creature being described. We will explore their unique features, their habitats, and the worlds they inhabited, bringing them out of the shadows of extinction and into the light. Our journey begins in a world of ice, a vast, frozen expanse that covered much of the northern hemisphere. Here, in the biting winds of the Pleistocene tundra, lived a true giant, an icon of the Ice Age, the Woolly Mammoth. It is an animal that captures the imagination, a symbol of a time when our planet was much colder and wilder. These magnificent creatures were perfectly adapted to their harsh environment, a testament to nature's ingenuity in the face of extreme conditions. Picture an elephant, but grander. Standing up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing over 6 tons, the mammoth was a colossal presence on the landscape. Its body was cloaked in a thick, shaggy coat of hair with long, coarse guard hairs covering a dense, woolly undercoat. This dual-layered fur provided superb insulation against the relentless cold. Their most distinctive features, of course, were their enormous tusks. These were not simply for show. They were essential tools for survival. Curving dramatically upwards and sometimes crossing at the tips, these tusks could grow up to 16 feet long. The mammoths would use them to sweep away snow and ice, uncovering the frozen grasses, sedges, and shrubs that formed their diet. They were also formidable weapons, used for defense against predators and in battles between males for dominance and mating rights. These great wanderers moved in herds, much like modern elephants, traversing the vast treeless plains known as the Mammoth Steppe. They were a keystone species, their grazing and trampling shaping the very landscape they inhabited. From the frozen north, we travel to a single sun-drenched speck in the Indian Ocean, the island of Mauritius. Before the arrival of humans, this was a paradise, a secluded world where evolution had taken a unique and gentle path. It was here, and only here, that a truly peculiar bird made its home. A bird that has become the very emblem of extinction, known to all, not for its life, but for its disappearance. The dodo. It was a creature born of isolation, with no reason to fear and no need to fly. The dodo was a large, flightless bird, a relative of pigeons and doves that had grown to a weight of around 50 pounds. Its appearance was endearingly strange. It had a plump, rounded body covered in soft, grayish feathers with a tuft of curly white plumes for a tail. Its legs were short and stout, and its wings were tiny, vestigial things, utterly useless for flight. For countless generations, the dodo lived an untroubled existence. The forests of Mauritius provided everything it needed, and crucially, there were no natural predators on the island. This lack of threat shaped its very nature. The dodo was famously and fatally unafraid of humans. When sailors first arrived in the 16th century, they found a bird that would simply waddle up to them, a curiosity in a world it did not understand. This tameness, born of innocence, would be its undoing. Its inability to fly made it easy prey, not just for hungry sailors, but for the animals they brought with them. Pigs, dogs, and rats introduced to the island plundered the dodo's ground-level nests, devouring eggs and chicks. The combination of overhunting and invasive species was devastating. In less than a century after its discovery, the trusting soul of Mauritius was gone forever. Its story is a stark and poignant lesson in the fragility of island ecosystems and the swift, irreversible impact of humanity. We now return to the Ice Age, a time of great peril and great predators. Ruling over this dangerous landscape was a carnivore of terrifying power and iconic weaponry. This was not a tiger, despite its common name, but a distinct lineage of feline predator whose very name evokes an image of lethal force, the saber-toothed cat Smilodon. It was an ambush hunter of unparalleled design, built not for speed, but for overwhelming power and a swift, deadly strike. Its fame rests upon those magnificent and terrifying canines. These were not merely teeth, they were daggers of bone, growing up to 11 inches long. They were flattened from side to side like blades and finely serrated along the edges. These were delicate instruments of death, not designed for crushing bone but for slicing through the soft flesh of the throat and neck. To wield such weapons, the Smilodon had an incredible gape, able to open its jaw to an astonishing 120 degrees, far wider than any modern cat. The creature itself was a powerhouse. It was more robustly built than a modern lion, with a powerful muscular neck to drive those saber teeth home, and immensely strong forelimbs. It likely hunted by ambush, using its strength to wrestle large prey like bison and young mammoths to the ground. Once the prey was subdued, it would deliver that single, precise, and fatal bite. It was a specialist hunter, perfectly evolved to take down the megafauna of its time. For thousands of years, the saber-toothed cat was a supreme predator across the Americas. Its fossils, famously recovered in their hundreds from the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, give us a window into its life and its world. But as the Ice Age ended and the giant herbivores it depended on began to disappear, so too did this formidable hunter. Its specialized tools of predation, once its greatest asset, became a liability in a changing world, and the blade-toothed hunter vanished into prehistory. Imagine, if you will, a sky so full of birds that it darkens the sun for hours, and a sound so thunderous it drowns out all other noise. This was not a fantasy, but a reality in North America for centuries. The author of this spectacle was a single species, a bird whose population was once so vast it seemed infinite, the passenger pigeon. Its story is perhaps the most dramatic and rapid extinction event ever recorded, a fall from unimaginable abundance to absolute zero. At its peak, it's estimated there were 3 to 5 billion passenger pigeons. They were, honestly, a force of nature. Flocks were described as being a mile wide and hundreds of miles long, a living feathered river that could take several days to pass a single spot. The beating of their wings created a wind, and their collective weight was enough to break the branches of the trees where they chose to roost. They moved across the continent in search of food, mainly acorns and chestnuts, shaping the forests as they went. The bird itself was elegant and streamlined, built for long, fast flight. It had a bluish-gray head and back, with a reddish-brown breast and iridescent feathers on its neck that shimmered with gold, green, and purple in the sunlight. They were social creatures to an extreme degree, living, feeding, migrating, and nesting in these colossal congregations. Their survival strategy was one of sheer numbers. Predators could take their fill, but it would have no significant impact on the population as a whole. This abundance, though, became their curse. As European settlers expanded across America, the pigeons were seen as an inexhaustible resource. They were hunted on an industrial scale, shot and netted by the millions, their nesting sites destroyed. The development of the telegraph and the railway meant that hunters could be alerted to the location of a flock and transport the birds to city markets with brutal efficiency. The population, which relied on its vast numbers to reproduce successfully, collapsed. The last one, a female named Martha, died alone in the Cincinnati Zoo in 1914. The river in the sky had run dry. On the island of Tasmania, south of Australia, there once roamed a truly unique predator. It was not a tiger, nor was it a wolf, but a marsupial, a pouched mammal that had evolved to fill a similar ecological niche. With the stripes of a tiger and the shape of a dog, it was an extraordinary example of convergent evolution. This was the thylacine, more commonly known as the Tasmanian tiger, a creature whose recent extinction is, honestly, shrouded in mystery and regret. The thylacine was a slender, dog-like animal with yellowish-brown fur and a series of dark transverse stripes across its back, rump, and the base of its tail. This distinctive pattern earned it its feline nickname. Unlike a dog, though, it had a stiff tail and an incredible secret weapon, a jaw that could open to a remarkably wide angle, perhaps as much as 80 degrees. It was a shy, nocturnal hunter, preying on kangaroos, wallabies, and birds in the forests and grasslands of Tasmania. For thousands of years, the thylacine was the apex predator of the island. But with the arrival of European settlers in the 19th century, its fate was sealed. It was blamed, often unfairly, for attacks on sheep, and a bounty was placed on its head. This led to relentless hunting, trapping, and poisoning. The combined pressure of this persecution, along with habitat loss and maybe even disease, decimated the already small population. The shy ghost of the forest was pushed to the very brink. The last known wild thylacine was shot in 1930. The last captive individual, a male named Benjamin, died in the Hobart Zoo in 1936, tragically from neglect, left locked out of his sheltered sleeping quarters on a freezing night. Just 2 months earlier, the species had been granted official protection, a move that came far too late. Despite countless alleged sightings since, no conclusive evidence has ever been found. The Tasmanian tiger has vanished, leaving behind only grainy black and white footage and a lingering sense of loss for a one-of-a-kind marsupial predator. In the cold, rocky waters of the North Atlantic, from the shores of Canada to Iceland and the British Isles, lived a bird that seemed to belong to another hemisphere. It was large, flightless, and perfectly at home in the sea. It looked and behaved so much like a penguin that early sailors actually named the southern birds after it. This was the great auk, the original penguin of the North, and its story is a chilling tale of human greed leading directly to extinction. The great auk stood nearly 3 feet tall, a handsome bird with a stark black back and a brilliant white front. It had a large, powerful bill, grooved and marked with a distinctive white patch in front of its eye. Its wings were tiny, paddle-like flippers, useless for flight but perfect for flying underwater, where it was a swift and agile hunter of fish. On land, it was clumsy and awkward, waddling upright, which made it incredibly vulnerable. For centuries, these birds gathered in huge breeding colonies on a few remote, rocky islands. These locations offered some protection from land predators like polar bears. Here, they would lay a single, large, pear-shaped egg on the bare rock. This low reproductive rate, combined with their flightlessness and colonial nesting habits, made them exceptionally susceptible to human disturbance. And disturb them, we did. Humans hunted the great auk for thousands of years, but the arrival of European explorers and fishermen in the 15th century marked the beginning of the end. The birds were harvested on a massive scale for their meat, eggs, and feathers, which were used for stuffing mattresses. They were so easy to catch that sailors would simply lay a plank from their ship to the shore and herd the helpless birds aboard. As they became rarer, museum collectors and scientists, desperate for specimens, created a new demand. The last confirmed pair, found incubating an egg on an island off Iceland, were killed on the 3rd of July, 1844. The egg was smashed. With that final brutal act, the penguin of the North was gone. The plains of southern Africa were once home to a most peculiar equine. At first glance, it looked like a zebra, but only from the front. From the back, it looked like a horse. This strange and beautiful creature was the quagga, a subspecies of the plains zebra, distinguished by its unique and limited striping pattern. It was a living curiosity, a testament to the wonderful variations that evolution can produce, but its uniqueness could not save it from the tide of human expansion. The quagga's pattern was its defining feature. Bold, dark stripes covered its head and neck, and the front portion of its body gradually fading into a plain, brownish, unstriped hindquarter. No two quaggas were striped exactly alike, making each individual unique. They lived in large herds, grazing the grasslands of South Africa's Karoo region, often alongside other animals like wildebeest and ostriches. Their stripes, like those of other zebras, likely served as camouflage and a way to confuse predators. When Dutch settlers arrived in South Africa, they saw the quagga not as a natural wonder, but as a competitor for grazing land for their livestock. They were also hunted extensively for their meat and for their tough, durable hides. The name quagga is said to be derived from the Khoikhoi word for zebra, an imitation of the animal's distinctive call. This call, once a common sound on the veld, began to fade as the herds were systematically eliminated. The slaughter was so complete and so rapid that few people realized the quagga was a distinct entity until it was too late. Many were killed before their uniqueness was even appreciated by the wider world. The last wild quagga was probably shot in the late 1870s. The very last of its kind, a mare, died in an Amsterdam zoo in 1883. She died alone, her passing unnoticed at the time. Only later did the zookeepers realize that with her death, the entire species had blinked out of existence, leaving behind only a handful of skins, skeletons, and a single photograph of a living animal. Let us journey back once more to the post-glacial landscapes of Europe and Asia. In the damp woodlands and open grasslands that followed the retreat of the ice, there lived a deer of truly epic proportions. It was an animal defined by one staggering feature, a physical attribute so grand it seems almost impossible. This was the Irish elk, or Megaloceros giganteus. And despite its name, it was not an elk, but the largest deer that ever lived, bearing the largest antlers of any known animal. The Irish elk was a magnificent beast, standing about 7 feet tall at the shoulder, larger than a modern moose. But its body, impressive as it was completely overshadowed by its antlers. Spanning up to 12 feet from tip to tip and weighing around 90 pounds, this was a crown of bone unlike any other. This enormous rack was grown and shed each year, a phenomenal investment of energy and resources for the male. It was a clear and unambiguous signal of health and strength. These antlers were not primarily for defense against predators like wolves or bears, though they could certainly serve that purpose. Their main function was for display and ritual combat between males during the mating season, or rut. Rival stags would lock these colossal antlers, pushing and twisting in a great test of strength to win the right to mate with the females. It was a dramatic spectacle, a contest of titans played out across the ancient European plains. The Irish elk thrived for thousands of years, its range stretching from Ireland to Siberia. So, why did it disappear? The prevailing theory points to a combination of factors. As the climate changed again, the forests grew denser, making it difficult for such a large animal with such sprawling antlers to move. This changing vegetation also may not have provided the specific high-quality nutrients needed to grow those massive antlers each year. Unable to adapt, the majestic giant, the crowned king of the ancient forests, faded away. In the icy, nutrient-rich waters of the Bering Sea, there once lived a marine mammal of immense size and gentle disposition. It was a relative of the manatee and the dugong, but it dwarfed them completely. Discovered by Europeans in 1741, it was gone less than 3 decades later. This is the story of Steller's sea cow, a slow-moving, peaceful giant whose trusting nature led to one of the swiftest extinctions of a large animal by human hands. The sea cow was enormous, reaching lengths of up to 30 feet and weighing as much as 10 tons. It was a true behemoth, the largest mammal of its time besides the great whales. It had a thick, tough, bark-like skin to protect it from the sharp rocks and ice of its coastal habitat. It had no teeth, instead using 2 large keratinous plates in its mouth to munch on the kelp and seagrasses that grew in the shallow waters around the Commander Islands. It was completely aquatic, unable to submerge its huge body entirely. These gentle giants lived in small family groups, communicating with sighs and snorts. The naturalist Georg Steller, after whom the animal is named, was the only scientist to ever observe them alive. He described them as being incredibly social and seemingly devoted to one another. He noted that if one was harmed, others in the group would attempt to come to its aid, a trait that made them even more vulnerable to hunters. They showed no fear of humans, allowing boats to approach, and even allowing people to touch them. Steller was part of a shipwrecked expedition, and his crew hunted the sea cows for food. When they were rescued, word of this massive, slow, and easy-to-catch source of meat spread to fur traders and whalers. A relentless slaughter began. The sea cows, confined to a tiny geographic range and slow to reproduce, stood no chance. By 1768, just 27 years after its discovery by the outside world, the last Steller's sea cow had been killed. A magnificent, peaceful creature, wiped from the face of the earth before we ever truly knew it. Our final journey takes us to the remote islands of New Zealand, a land that, for millions of years, was a kingdom of birds. With no native land mammals, birds evolved to fill every available niche. The role of the large herbivore, the grazer and browser of the forest, was taken by a family of giants. These were the moa, a group of 9 species of enormous, flightless birds, the tallest the world has ever known. The different species of moa varied in size, but the largest, the South Island giant moa, was a true titan. The females, which were significantly larger than the males, could stand up to 12 feet tall with their necks outstretched and weigh over 500 pounds. They were built for power, with thick, strong legs and no wings whatsoever, not even the tiny vestigial stubs seen on other flightless birds. They had truly lost their wings completely over the course of their evolution. For millennia, the moa roamed the forests, shrublands, and subalpine regions of New Zealand. They were browsers, using their beaks to snip leaves, twigs, and fruit. Their only natural predator was another giant bird, the Haast's eagle, the largest eagle known to have existed, which was capable of hunting even the largest moa. This was a land of giants, a unique ecosystem that had developed in splendid isolation, a world ruled by birds. This ancient world was shattered with the arrival of the first humans, the Maori, around the year 1300. For them, the moa were a tremendous resource, a slow, walking source of meat, with large eggs for food, bones for tools and ornaments, and feathers for clothing. They hunted the moa with devastating effectiveness. Within just 200 years, all 9 species were gone. Their predator, the Haast's eagle, deprived of its primary food source, soon followed them into extinction. The towering rulers of New Zealand's forests had fallen. We have walked with giants, seen skies filled with living rivers, and met the gentle souls of isolated islands. The stories of these 10 creatures are but a few threads from a much larger and now lost part of our planet's living tapestry. Each one is a reminder of the incredible ingenuity of evolution and the sheer wonder that life can produce. Their silence today speaks volumes, a powerful echo that resonates through time, telling a story of beauty, adaptation, and ultimately of fragility in the face of a rapidly changing world. These animals are gone, but their stories endure as lessons. They teach us about the intricate connections that bind ecosystems together and the profound and often irreversible impact of our own species. As we stand in the present, looking back at these ghosts of the past, we are left with a choice. We can either be the cause of more such stories, or we can become the guardians of the incredible biodiversity that still surrounds us. The future of so many species is a story that is yet to be written. Thank you for joining me, Jimmy, on this journey through time. The world is full of wonders, both past and present, and I hope this has sparked your curiosity to learn more. If you could bring back just one of these incredible creatures, which one would it be and why? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration, please consider subscribing and joining our community for more amazing stories from the natural world.